Hey everyone, Mark from Avalaunch here as always. And today we're joined by Mr.DuckBill from Platypus, the founder. And this is the next Avalaunch IDO. And I want to start by saying this is one that I've been particularly excited about for a long time. I met Mr.DuckBill and the team some time ago, and we've been working toward this event for a while now. And the reason I'm so bullish on it and just excited about the project and the team in general is I really feel like it represents a new chapter for Avalanche. And what I mean by that is, a lot of the DeFi and applications have their lineage sort of in other places very directly. And this project specifically, I feel like is one of the first protocols we're seeing on Avalanche that is writing a new story in some ways. And I'll let Mr. DuckBill kind of talk about the roots and what's what, but I really think this is a special project and it's great to have you here today. So why don't you just give a quick intro to who you are and what you do on the project.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mark. It's my pleasure to be here today, launch the project and talking to you. And I'm so grateful that you have talked so high about me and also the project. So, in fact, for myself, I was actually like everyone before. So I was a university graduate that was confused about my career. So my first job is actually working in a TradFi company as a small potato, handling some boring and trivial tasks. So, but then after a few years, in 2017, I witnessed the ICO boom and got more and more interested in the crypto industry. So finally, I quit my TradFi job and joined a centralized exchange back in 2018. I've been working there since then, learned a lot about crypto, and finally left the company this year to create Platypus. And speaking of Platypus, it's also interesting because it was a modified version of my master thesis. So back then, when I first entered the crypto industries, I decided to further enhance my knowledge in crypto. So I have applied it for a master program in one of my local universities. So where they have courses specifically in cryptography and blockchain. So and in the final semester, I had to write a thesis. So I just thought, hey, why not try to devise a new DeFi protocol? And this has become the very original prototype of Platypus.
Very, very cool. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that this began so early, sort of in your thinking and career around crypto. And here we are today with Platypus, and presented with something that is quite innovative and quite unique. And that's kind of the magic of all this stuff for me. And so let's just kind of get into it. Let's talk about Platypus at a high level. What is Platypus, right? But more importantly, what problem is it solving? What is it tackling? And why is now the time where this project is relevant? Why is there a need for it now?
Yep, sure. So I will probably divide this into three levels. So
Mhm.
on the surface, right, Platypus wants to improve StableSwap. So our unique system designs enable us to have several advantages against our other competitors. So first is lower slippage, and second is a simpler UX. So we are providing a more user-friendly alternative for users if they want to swap stablecoins or farm on stablecoins. So for deeper level, right, we want to become dominant and native stable swap in the Avalanche ecosystem. So StableSwap is actually a crucial infrastructure to any DeFi ecosystem because it allows more algo stablecoins or even simpler asset to thrive. So without a StableSwap, these new algo stablecoins will struggle to find the liquidity or the marketplace for them for people to acquire them. And lastly, I would say at the very core of our philosophy, we believe that the most urgent problem that we want to solve is to bring new innovation to the Avalanche ecosystem. So as you said, many projects right now on the Avalanche Eco have their root from their other blockchain like Ethereum. So we want to show to the world that Avalanche is a great blockchain that can foster new innovations on its own. So I have this idea for Platypus. Of course, I can choose to launch in other blockchain, but I believe that I'm really here to bring something new for the Avalanche ecosystem, and that's why I'm launching Platypus only on Avalanche. And StableSwap, I would say, is just the beginning. So we still have many innovative ideas that we plan to do in our upcoming roadmap. So yeah, you can keep an eyes on us.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and we'll get into some of that stuff later. But you mentioned that the genesis of this was like some earlier work of yours, but then there was a point where you decided this is a project I want to build and deploy. And I just want to kind of get a picture of, what is that, the early execution on something like this look like? How do you go from the idea in your head and the early concept to the earliest execution? Like, what is it? Like, what did it look like for the Platypus team?
Right. I think in the early days, right, I also have a lot of frustrations and confusion for how to bring this idea from a concept to a real life project. So at the beginning, of course, I've thought about launching on Ethereum. So, but again, because first of all, I love Avalanche, of course, and secondly, like launching on Ethereum is really, really competitive. So because I was so into Avalanche, right? I just think about, hey, why don't just try to connect and ask the Avalanche Foundation whether they can offer any support for me to launch this, right? So luckily, in like an OG in the Avalanche people, I do have some connections. And finally, I get connected to some of the core member in the Avalanche Foundation and pitch them about this idea. So they seems interested in it. So they offered me a grant for bringing this project to life. So we got a small amount of grant, and luckily I got the support from some of my good friends like Mr.DuckBill and also Autofruit. So they trusted me and helped me together to execute on the project. So I believe these are the two most important things when you try to create a project, right? The first thing is the initial funding and support, that you get the validation from some external source that this idea is feasible. And secondly, you have a small but passionate team that are willing to bring this product to life.
Yeah, my first impression of you guys, because we work with a lot of projects and we talk to a lot of projects and we see a lot of things come together. And my first impression, and at this point, I like to think we are pretty good at identifying potential, really. And from the first meetings we had, it was so obvious that your guys' vision just had this cohesion that was going to be really, really effective in pushing this forward. And I want to kind of move past the history and talk more specifically about some of like the nitty gritty architecture stuff and the elevator pitch, right, of Platypus is a new type of AMM. And anyone in DeFi that's been around since Uniswap has heard an AMM, probably thinks they understand it, has looked into it, but it's always in the context of, two token pairs on each side of the pool, one token in relation to another. But Platypus, right, is a new type of AMM that deals with stablecoins, a StableSwap. And so I want to understand in what ways is a StableSwap AMM different, and also similar to the more traditional AMM that people are used to interacting with.
Yeah, sure. So maybe let me talk about the difference between general AMM and StableSwap first. So for general AMM, like the Uniswap, right, you always inject token in pairs. So the reason for that is required by the design of constant product market maker. So StableSwap kind of improved that upon that. So because sometimes you can inject more than a pair of tokens. So for example, in Curve, they have the base of 3 CRE token, where you have a pool comprised of 3 different tokens. You can even have like more tokens, like 4 tokens or 5 tokens, whatever. Depends on what asset you are supporting.
Mm-hmm.
And another difference for StableSwap and general AMM is that the curvature or the slippage for general AMM is higher. Because they are meant to be used for volatile asset trading, and you want the curve to be more sensitive so that with a small amount of trade, you are changing the price for a larger amount that you can support volatile asset and prevent impermanent loss. Not prevent, to lower the impermanent loss as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But for StableSwap, it's different because the underlying asset are prepped, so they will have the same price. So you don't want to penalize the trade for that, because even like the pool get very imbalanced, still the asset underlying should be at 1 USD. Then you cannot charge a high slippage. Otherwise, people will not use your platform, and it's not capital efficient. So StableSwap wants to improve that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are like a farmer, right, a yield farmer, the difference is that in general AMM, you will have impermanent loss by farming there. But in StableSwap, the impermanent loss can be much lower or even zero, because the underlying asset are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about Platypus then. So and how Platypus is different from both channel like Uniswap or Curve is that we enable something that is truly single-side liquidity provision. So some people may think that, hey, you can also inject single-side liquidity in other StableSwap like Curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but why Platypus is still different? So imagine a case where in Curve you have an imbalanced pool, which this is quite common, right? The pool get imbalanced because one asset is more popular than the others.
Mm-hmm.
So if you try to inject a large amount of liquidity single-sided to a token that is in excess, you will suffer from a large penalty in Curve. Because for Curve, when you inject the token in excess, right, you are bringing the system to further equilibrium. And that is why they are charging you a penalty for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But in Platypus, you won't suffer from this, regardless of how the pool composition is like, because our underlying algorithm is different. So I would say then for Platypus, it's much easier for normal users, because you don't really need to take care about what the pool composition is like. You never suffer from penalty when you try to farm on Platypus.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And just before we go on, just to clarify one term that I think is useful is, what do you mean when you say capital efficiency? Like, how does that kind of, how does that play out?
Right. Capital efficiency can have a lot of meaning. So in general, it's talking about like with the capital that you have on hand, how can you utilize that capital efficiently? So for example, like if for a StableSwap, you want to use the liquidity provider's capital efficiently. So with the amount that you have, you need to provide a very low slippage from users, so you can utilize the capital that are already owned by the protocol. So on the other hand, it's also talking about, like, say, for example, if there are some capital that will never be used by this protocol, can you utilize this capital in some other ways? For example, whether you can lend them out, or whether you can use some other method to try to revital this capital for other meaning. So, so in our core design, we really want Platypus to become a very capital efficient protocol. So in our future roadmap, we have different ways to improve the capital efficiency for our protocol.
Mm-hmm. And what about liquidity fragmentation? Because one of the things that Platypus talks a lot about solving is this problem of liquidity fragmentation. And so I want to understand what exactly that is, and the solution, right, that Platypus offers, and then what implications this has across DeFi by being solved or made better at the very least.
Sure. So liquidity fragmentation reduces capital efficiency because liquidity are not being shared. So that will result in waste of capital and higher slippage. So Platypus open the grid pool is decided to solve this problem. So imagine like a imagine like when you have two pools. So one pool is USDT and DAI, and another pool is USDT with USDC. So maybe the USDT and USDC pool is more popular than the USDT are always being traded in that pool, but the USDT and DAI pool are less popular. So the USDT in that pool is not being so frequently used. In this case, you really like to compensate one pool's USDT by another pool to make it more capital efficient. So that's what open liquidity pool of Platypus is about.
Got it. And what about, asset liability management? One of the things about Platypus is there's a lot of different things kind of happening to make this thing come together. And one of the core concepts and components is asset liability management that kind of underlies all of this, right? And I want you to just, explain to the lay person, right? Like what that means, right? And what the innovation is related to it within Platypus and the impacts of it across the Platypus protocol.
Sure. So for asset liability management, you probably it has its root in accounting. So in accounting, there is a balance sheet where every company's financial can be broken down into asset, liability, and equity. So, but DeFi is no different. Although DeFi are decentralized and there are no single legal entity as a company, but still it is a protocol in itself. So it is an entity that has its own financial. Hence, it can be analyzed by accounting techniques. So we have taken this concept and treat the liquidity provider's liquidity as a liability to the protocol, where we record the exact amount and which token that the liquidity provider has deposited. And when they try to withdraw the asset, we will return the same amount and the same token to them. This is the main reason why we can use asset liability management to enable so many different things in Platypus, like single-side liquidity provision, as well as open liquidity pool. And besides, because we are balancing the pool using coverage ratio defined by asset divided by liability, so we are only handling the imbalance of the pool based on the token's popularity in itself. So in this case, we can really scale up to more tokens in our pool, unlike for other StableSwap, because they define their equilibrium condition by the same amount of liquidity. So if there is one token that is less popular than the other token, so they cannot really be added into the existing pool because they will become the bottleneck for the growth of the whole pool. And that is why measuring by coverage ratio in the token itself can better reflect the natural demand supply of the token. So it can help us to scale to more tokens.
Got it. And you've talked some about slippage. I want to sort of understand that a little better and just scalability in general. So these are two things that Platypus is trying to tackle: slippage, lower slippage, and higher scalability. And I want to understand these concepts sort of at a high level, right? And then how they come together within Platypus to create something like really innovative.
Yep, no problem. So lower slippage is quite obvious, right? So you've got a better deal when you try to swap the tokens. So I think the key here is what do we mean by higher scalability? So I would like to talk about a recent situation that we are tackling. So we all know that USDT and USDC that people are using in the Avalanche ecosystem right now are coming from the Avalanche bridge. So they are the bridge token that are coming from Ethereum. But we also know that USDT and USDC are coming natively to Avalanche. That means that maybe the USDT Treasury or USDC Treasury will directly mint this token on Avalanche instead of bridging them from Ethereum. So this will create different token representation on the Avalanche blockchain. And because they are two different tokens with two different addresses, they are fragmented liquidity. And you need a StableSwap to allow people to easily convert between these two tokens. So imagine like in other StableSwap, right? They will have difficulty to add this new token into their existing pool. So what their solution normally is they create a new pool for that, adding these two tokens in with other tokens. But then they need to worry about, hey, what is the natural, what is the liquidity size for this token, right? So because the equilibrium condition by other StableSwap is defined by same liquidity. If USDT.E is so popular, but the native USDT, no one is using it, then you cannot really create a new pool just for that, because the native USDT will become the bottleneck for this pool. So they really don't have a good solution to that. So, but talking about Platypus, because we define the things differently, we can tolerate that the native USDT and the USDT.E token have different natural deposit or liability. So that's the main reason why our pools can be more scalable.
Very cool. I think this leads well into just the general user experience of Platypus. And I know you guys are doing a lot of good work in just offering a better user experience to DeFi in general, right? And I want to explore like what you guys are doing to drive user experience forward. And why do you think some of these things haven't been done or achieved before?
Yep, sure. So as I said before, so we offer lower scalability and simple UX by using our new algorithm. And it has not been done before because other AMM don't really have this concept of asset liability management. And I believe we are among one of the first protocol that bring this concept in for AMM. So to improve the user experience, right? You can just try to use our app. It's already live on the mainnet today. So you see that the single side of manipulation is really going to make the UX much more intuitive for less sophisticated users.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. DeFi, even the really kind of straightforward applications, they're isolating to new users. And I think that experience for less sophisticated users, less experienced is critical, right? Just for broader adoption. And so you guys went through your test net. I know that you guys are very, very rigorous about the security of the protocol. And with DeFi in particular, there's a lot of challenges that present themselves. These protocols hold a ton of money. They're complex. They need time sort of out in the wild often to be understood fully. And so I wonder, outside of, your standard audit, just the internal sort of technical due diligence, are there any mechanisms in place at the level of the protocol and the architecture to prevent loss of funds, sort of accurate representation of price, and just sort of interference by bad actors?
Yeah, sure, of course. We have done a lot of things in order to secure our system. So I'm still quite amused and scared that our protocol is already handling 10 millions. So I always think that, hey, if it's get hacked, what should I do? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's the best that we just don't let this hack or whatever exploit to happen. So that's really our goal, right?
Yeah.
So, yep, of course, we have a standard audit. So our two auditors are Hacken and Omnisir. So the first audit was already complete, and the second audit is close to completion. So besides the standard audit, right, we have analyzed our system design in some very rigorous mathematical proofs. And we have even self-identified possible attack called withdrawal arbitrage. And we have proposed a solution ourselves to mitigate the attack as well. You can find all these details in our technical yellow paper. we did spend a lot of effort to try to prove, at least from a theoretical standpoint, that the system is secure. And besides, we also run economic simulation to ensure the system is at least robust in a controlled environment with some given assumptions. And next, of course, we are now currently running on the mainnet for our Avalaunch. So we kept the TVL system just to 10 million. It's important because it can let us to make the system live and better test in real world environment and still keeping the risk exposure manageable. So the last thing we want is to have like a 1 billion injected to our system, and then we get hacked and everybody gets screwed up. So yeah.
And how
and
fast?
Lastly,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. And lastly, I mean, we also like to have some strict internal control to make sure that there are no bad actors, even within our team. So our treasury is already kept in a multi-sig wallet, which require free hour 4 signing before any transactions can be done. So no single actor can use the fund unilaterally. In the future, we have plans to add more seats into the multi-sig wallet as well, beyond the core team members.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to ask because I was curious when you opened the mainnet and put the $10 million cap on, how quickly did you hit that cap?
We hit the cap at 15 minutes.
Yeah,
it's faster than I imagined. We want to further enhance the cap as well, but that will be contingent on the completion of the second audit. So yeah, we will see.
Got it. And here's a kind of just a more abstract question, related but also unrelated, because every day, there are, it seems like, new exploits and insane things happening in DeFi, and I'm sure you pay attention. And I'm wondering if there's any lessons that you've been able to glean and incorporate or not, just very generally speaking, from some of the security mistakes of other people recently.
Yeah, of course. Like, in fact, there is one that has happened very recently, which is Mono X. So they are also a single sign AMM, which I'm quite surprised that there are other projects that are exploring in this direction as well. They was being hacked and more than 30 millions were being stolen. So yeah, that's exactly the reason why we are running the other test, right? So I think the lesson to learn here is that it's very risky to run a single sign AMM beyond StableSwap. Because unlike constant product AMM, where the volatility risk, or you can call that impermanent loss, we're bared by the liquidity providers. Single sign AMM needs to bear a lot of these volatility risk to the protocol itself. So it's also harder for single sign AMM to get the price reference for less popular token. So in the Model X case, their own governance token. So a general trading for single sign AMM was something that we are aware of since day one. And we decided to leave it and just launch Platypus as a StableSwap because we know that this is risky. And to do a StableSwap, the risk management will be much easier. We are still actively researching on general trading for single sign AMM, but we won't launch it until we really feel comfortable about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with the testnet, which you guys went through a testnet campaign not too long ago. Again, I'm curious, obviously this is an important step in understanding the product and the contracts. But did you guys learn or take away anything from that testnet? I'm making the generalized assumption that it's important, but I'm wondering if you can talk about from a development perspective why that testnet period is so important.
Yeah, it's very important. Like our app is not perfect from day one, and we are constantly try to iterate for it and improve the product. So that's why the comment from users are very important. So the test and launch allow us to test the app's usability in a safe environment before we roll it out to production. So just in the testing campaign, we already discovered, in fact, some of the UI bugs that were unknown during our development stage. So a lot of users have also tried our app, provide a lot of useful comments and suggestions to make the app even easier to use. So if you have participated in both the Testnet campaign and also our Avalanche, you should have noticed that our app already looked very different from before. So, I mean, thank you very much for participating in that. And we hope that in the future, we will also improve the product as it goes by.
Awesome. And what about the token itself, the PTP token? Because we haven't touched on that yet. This is obviously what is being distributed in the IDO, and I want to go into its place in the protocol, its utility, and the value to users and how it serves the ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. What if I tell you that the PTP token is useless?
I'd freak out.
All right, I'll say that PTP token is really useless, but it's useful for one purpose. The one purpose for the PTP token is to generate VE-PTP token. So if you have read our previous Medium article, VE-PTP stands for voting escrow PTP. So you cannot buy VE-PTP token from the market. The only way for you to get VE-PTP is by staking your PTP and wait for the VE-PTP token to be generated as time goes by. So in some sense, VE-PTP is equal to time. I personally really love this idea because it provides a very easy way for us to differentiate who are the long-term supporters for the project and who are not. Yeah. So if you just buy a bunch of PTP token for whatever purpose and you sell it right afterwards, because there are no time involved, so you cannot generate VE-PTP for that, then we know that you are not a supporter to the project. So some other leak here will play a lot of checks on VE-PTP in the future. So make sure if you get your PTP token, stick them to generate the VE-PTP and get as much as VE-PTP as possible. So a lot of our future roadmap and development will be surrounding VE-PTP token. So in essence, I would say the voting token or the governance token for Platypus is VE-PTP, but not PTP. PTP is just a generating engine for you to acquire VE-PTP token. And as for the use of the VE-PTP token, right? First of all, it will allow you to increase the liquidity mining yield. So the detail is already highlighted in our recent Medium article. For more technical users, we also have a research paper for that. We have divided our liquidity mining pool into the base pool and the boosting pool, where only the VE-PTP token holders are eligible for the emission coming from the boosting pool. And besides, VE-PTP token in the future, of course, will be used for voting. So you can expect you will see something similar to Curve, where we'll use the VE-PTP token to bribe and change the emission allocation for different tokens that you like. And lastly, I think just for all typical DeFi protocols, VE-PTP will allow you to share the revenue generated by the protocol.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of utility to it, but I encourage people to check out the technical article and the Medium for sure. So one thing that occurs to me is, DeFi is a very competitive space right now, and it's not getting any less competitive. And there's a lot of competition for attention and liquidity and users and usage and volume and everything, right? And so how does Platypus plan to stay competitive, be competitive, but achieve visibility in the users and liquidity in the face of kind of all of this excessive stimulation and information coming from every direction in DeFi?
Yep, sure. So, well, at least we are a StableSwap, and surprisingly, it's not that crowded in the Avalanche ecosystem for StableSwap.
Yeah.
Our only competitors right now are Curve, Axial, and Gondola. And I believe that our unique system design in itself is quite salient to differentiate us against them. And besides, of course, like in our future, we have a lot of marketing campaign and new features that will surprise our users. So I am not afraid to achieve like a visibility and keep the protocol competitive to our competitors.
Mhm. That's well, that's good to hear. I mean, one of the things a lot of projects will do, right, is in an effort to do some of this outside of the core value of the project, is work and collaborate with other projects and try and integrate and make the whole thing space bigger, better by working together. And so I wonder, is this something that you guys do, and if so, how do you approach it? And is this even something that benefits Platypus, or does it just need to exist in its own world?
Well, definitely. I believe that like the growing of the whole ecosystem is the most important thing that we want to foster. Um, Avalanche is still like early blockchain ecosystem compared to a lot of its competitors, although its growth rate and traction is really great.
Yeah.
So what we really want to do is really to become like a backbone of the eco and try to support and nurture as much as a project as possible in the future. So like for example, in our private sale round, we have already connected to many partners and blue chip projects in the Avalanche ecosystem. So for example, like Avalaunch, Trader Joe, Banky, Yak, and Colony. So I believe connecting with these blue chip projects can ensure that we at least have the stance in the ecosystem to position ourselves as one of the blue chip projects in the future. So after we really become a blue chip project in the Avalanche ecosystem, what we want to do is to help other projects, right? So what can the StableSwap help? Of course, is to support more native algo stablecoin or even similar asset projects to launch. So all these projects, they need a StableSwap to provide liquidity and maintain the prep to them. So we are very happy to help this project in the future. So that's why we are already talking to some of the native projects like Okadao or Defrost or Pincash. So yeah, expect that we'll have many collaborations with native projects in the coming months.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think this is true of all ecosystems to a degree, but one of the things that I've noticed about Avalanche in particular is that collaboration, that working together, there's a real ROI and reward on that. And you kind of need to be doing it anyway, because that sort of business development effort is important. But here, I really feel like you get a yield on that. And it's just, I don't know exactly what that's about. And it's hard to kind of quantify, but it is something I've noticed. And so, in the broadest of terms, right? Let's talk about roadmap. And I want to kind of get into what's known and what isn't known. So I know you guys have deployed your mainnet. What's next? Like, when are you going to raise that cap? What comes after that? And what are your sort of short-term plans here?
Yep. Well, all founders want to avoid questions like this because you're asking for a specific timeline. But once I've said that, I'm bounded to that. So
No time, no timeline. So no
yeah,
dates, right? Just
sure,
conceptually.
sure. Yep. We already launched the Alpha mainnet. We want to raise the cap, but it depends on a lot of factors, right? So the first of all, as I said, is depending on when we can complete the second audit. And secondly, you know that the IDO is coming very soon. So the team is also very busy on handling the IDO. So if we are going to raise a cap, probably that will be after the IDO and after the second audit is completed. And also, I believe that the mainnet beta launch is not very far away. By beta launch, it means that we will remove the cap to allow people to just deposit whatever amount that you want, as well as liquidity mining. So expect something like this month or maybe early next month, I would say. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And so you're not going to like this question either. But and again, very conceptually, I know you guys have sort of big ambitions and plans, and you are taking things slow, understandably. but I'm wondering if you can just give some kind of color into what are some of the other types of things that Platypus might be looking at down the road to make the stable swap more durable and effective across DeFi.
Yeah, sure. Allow me to keep them secret. Because one thing that we notice is a lot of projects they have a very big roadmap when they
Yep.
announce a project, and then while people get excited buy the token, but then eventually they're delaying on their development. People are always asking when you're going to launch this, launch that. So yeah, we
Yeah.
don't really want to see that. And the same
Yeah.
thing is if you're announcing everything in advance, right? What's the surprise for people in the project? They already know everything from day one. So you leave no surprise for the community to excite them, right? That's why we intentionally keep our roadmap secret.
Yep.
So right now, we are a very novel native StableSwap at the beginning. But in the future, we may do something really different. We don't know. But what we really try to do is that we are not trying to do different things combining in the brand of Platypus. For every step or every verticals that we are going to launch in the future, they are all connected together because of our StableSwap design, because of asset liability management, because of VPDP. So you can expect that the evolution of our project will be surrounding the basic infrastructure that we have today.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I get it, and I like that answer. You know, you're a true showman. I like it. Okay, so Avalanche, right? We've talked a bunch about it. We obviously connect on this point. We've known each other for a long time now, and we both love Avalanche, and we're coming at it from different angles, right? You're building out a very fundamental layer of the DeFi ecosystem, and I'm trying to help good projects get started and build community. You know, two different, very different ways of achieving, I think, the same thing. And I want to understand your, as much as you can talk about history inside of Avalanche and what just building here is like as a builder. I mean, talk to the developers, right? Like, what has been your experience? Because I know what it's like from more of like a community perspective. And obviously our application is great and I'm very proud of it, but it's not nearly as technical as what you're doing. And so I want to get some insight into just what it feels like to build DeFi on Avalanche.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I'm also not a developer myself, but just from what I've learned from our developers, right? So the building infrastructure is really getting more and mature every day. So I still remember when we first tried to build the project, there isn't support for chainlink price oracle. There isn't support from the graph. And we want to deploy the subgraph and do some analysis for the project, and we cannot do that because that's not available. But just maybe after a few weeks, you suddenly say that, hey, the graph is coming to Avalanche. And even after a few weeks, hey, chainlink is there. So it's getting better and better every day that whatever things that you can use on Ethereum, they are coming to Avalanche as well. So that in itself is amazing. And besides that, I also think that the Avalanche ecosystems projects are really supporting each other and form a very cohesive community. So when we talk to some other projects like Trader Joe, Ilya, Banky, they're just so supportive that they are trying to help us as much as possible and tell us everything that they know. So I mean, building here is really awesome. And I believe that there's an amazing ecosystem that form a very loyal and sticky community and has a lot of the vibe like Ethereum maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, community and relationships aside, is there anything just about Avalanche specifically in the innovations happening here that make what you do possible where it wasn't possible before? And if not, you know, why is Avalanche still the best place to build this application and protocol?
Yeah, blazingly fast, low cost, and eco-friendly. Is that enough? So yeah, I believe for this, right, like a fast finality is definitely a pressure. So I'll go a bit technical here. It's real technical. So because we are not using constant product market maker, our slippage function is not symmetric. So that means that when you try to swap in our protocol, when you enter the from amount and the to amount, they are not symmetric to each other. So when the users enters to amount in Platypus, we need to use a numerical method to back solve the from amount. So we calculate this numerical method in our front end because, of course, calculate this in the back end will be very costly in smart contract. If a blockchain's finality is long, then the users will receive a very different amount from what he has input to the system. But because the finality in Avalanche is so fast, the amount that we calculate from the front end and when it goes into smart contract, eventually will be very similar for what the user input. And that's only possible because we are deploying in Avalanche.
Yeah, that makes sense. Here's my final question, and I'm going to encourage you to dream, and not give dates, and I'm not looking for features or roadmap items. I just wanna ask, what is the big vision for this? If Platypus launches and everything happens right, and you guys are able to execute in the ways that you hope, what does that success look like to you 5 years from now? I mean, I know it's hard, but that's the point of the question.
Yeah, I mean, in 5 years, I believe Avalanche and its ecosystem will conquer the world. We will build the future of France together. So what essentially Avalanche or DeFi in general is doing is trying to create a frictionless financial system that is open to everyone. So the traditional banking or financial infrastructure, there's so many rent-seeking agents in between. They're trying to steal your money from whatever means that they can. So DeFi is changing that. So the cost of transferring is so low, and you only need to pay a small amount of fee for whatever financial service that we are using. So I believe that Avalanche will definitely be one of the most competitive financial infrastructure in 5 years. And Platypus, if we are successful, we can become a backbone of this ecosystem. Of course, we support many different algo stablecoin, custodian or algorithmic, as well as pricing the asset. If there are any projects that are launching. So we are also expecting central bank digital currencies will be launched in Avalanche or DeFi. So they can be easy fiat on-ramp or off-ramp using CBDC. And Platypus algorithm is also well suited for the swapping between these CBDC. So maybe in the future, when you try to put your fiat money to the DeFi ecosystem, you will use CBDC and use Platypus at the same time. And beyond StableSwap, we have a lot of utilities and features that will be rolled out in our roadmap. That will also increase utilities and use case for Platypus. But again, they are secret at this moment.
Okay, well, I still think that's a great answer, and I really want to thank you for your time and your efforts here, and what you're doing for the ecosystem. I really truly believe it's not only very, very cool, but also important. Super bullish on Platypus and you and your team, and it's really a privilege, I think, to be a part of your guys' journey. I have a lot of respect for it. So thank you for allowing Avalaunch to participate and offering this to our community. And I know everyone's incredibly excited about what you guys are up to. So so thank you, and I really look forward to what your future will look like.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Also, my pleasure to be here and my pleasure to build on Avalanche.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, we will catch up on the roadmap when more is revealed.
Very soon, within 2 months.
Okay, you heard it here first. All right, Mr. DuckBill, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.